Back on MSNBC in the morning, I'm joined now by two key leaders in Congress, a Republican and a Democrat. Congressman Roy Blunt of Missouri is here, and Congressman Hoyer of Maryland. Welcome to you both. Congressman Blunt, let me ask you about the Virginia Tech massacre and the aftermath. Is there going to be a new political fight about gun control after this?
I don't know, David. The House, both Democrats and Republicans, has tended to be a strong advocate of Second Amendment rights. I don't know that anything that happened on the campus will change that. I do know that this is a moment we shouldn't rush to get beyond the tragedy of what happened. We need to really honor the families, the parents. I was a college president for 4 years before I came to Congress, and this kind of thing is a devastating thing for a campus. We never had anything like this, but we had some tragic deaths when I was at Southwest Baptist University, and the impact this has. The campus is supposed to be a place of life, a place of vitality, obviously not the reverse of that, and it's a terrible, tragic thing, and I think we need to give this a little time to sink in, both to the families and the campus and to the country, before we rush to what we should do next.
What about you, Congressman Hoyer? Is this going to find a way in terms of a priority item on the Democratic agenda now?
First, David, let me say I agree with Roy Blunt. This is a time for reflection, a time for mourning, a time to empathize with those who have lost children, those students who have lost fellow classmates, a university, a great university that has suffered a great tragedy. So this is a time for reflection, and we're going to have a resolution on the floor today, sponsored by the Virginia delegation, Rick Boucher, Congressman Boucher, which expresses the sentiments of sympathy and regret and concern by the Congress of the United States. Will there be discussion as to how events like this can be precluded? Certainly there will be. Will some of those relate to gun control legislation of some type? I think that is undoubtedly going to happen. But
you must think of this in terms of your own political history. After Columbine, there was a big emphasis on cracking down on the availability of guns in this country and age limits for the purchase of firearms by young people. Do you see it as a similar moment as you look at the facts in this case, or the political history being bad for Democrats, frankly, on this issue, that maybe it's not something you take up?
David, let me again reiterate, this is not the time for, it seems to be, debate and supposition as to what might happen. Do I think that there will be discussion as to how to prevent incidents like this in the future? I do. But I think this week is about the families, about the students, about the university, and yes, about how we can try to make this stop. But Roy Blunt's right. This is not the week for that.
Let me talk about Iraq, gentlemen. Congressman Blunt, you're going to be down at the White House today. The president wants to meet, talk about a way to end this showdown with Democrats on the issue of a deadline for the supplemental. But let me ask you a bigger question, because Republicans matter here a lot. Does the president still have Republicans behind him on the war sufficient to where he can take this tough stand, and for how long?
I think Republicans in the House, and I believe in the Senate as well, believe that how we leave Iraq is now much more important than how we got into Iraq. And the deadlines, the restrictions on the commanders in the field and the commander-in-chief, we don't think is the right thing to move forward with as part of what we do in the future in the country. Republicans are going to stand behind the president on that. I think all but a few Republicans, a couple of Republicans voted against that supplemental. 14 Democrats joined us voting against the supplemental. I think those numbers are pretty solid as long as we're talking about the decisions made by the commanders in the field. No successful military in history has ever announced the day they were going to leave a battle and won that battle.
But all that's fine, but there's got to be a finite amount of time here on this surge strategy where Republicans who are already, hearing it back in their districts are going to say, okay, we can stand up behind you, Mr. President.
I do think, David, that what happens between now and, say, Labor Day is very important. General Petraeus, some of us have been and had secure briefings with him already. He's available to the Congress in the next few days for more of those briefings. Clearly, what happens over the next few weeks does matter. It'll matter to Republicans. But this issue will be resolved during that period of time, and it has to be resolved. And hopefully the meeting the president's called today will be a big step toward what's going to be the final resolution.
Congressman Hoyer, just less than a minute here. Is there room for negotiation on a deadline for troop withdrawal from your point of view in the House?
David, first of all, you asked Roy Blunt, are they going to stand with the president? The issue is, are the members of the Congress going to stand with the American people? The American people overwhelmingly believe the policies being pursued by this administration are not working. Bob Gates, our Secretary of Defense, said we weren't winning in his confirmation hearings. And just yesterday, he said that the debate and the message being sent to the Iraqi government was a positive one for change. So this debate has been positive, productive. We have funded everything the president asked to support the troops. We have not in any way undermined the ability of the commander or his generals and sub-commanders to do anything on the field in bringing success that they determine is in the best interest of that success.
But, Congressman, isn't the key point here is whether there's any room for negotiation on the point about timelines?
Clearly, there's going to be room for discussion. The president sort of indicated when he invited us down there he was going to tell us what he wanted to do. We know what he wants to do. He wants to stay the course. We are hopeful that there will be room for discussion. We are certainly prepared for that, hope for that, want to see this matter resolved positively.
Our leaders on both sides of the aisle in Congress, Republican and Democratic, Congressman Hoyer and Congressman Roy Blunt. Thanks to both of you for coming on this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
We're going to pick up our coverage with Chris Jansen coming up at the top.